hello.
Hi, Cynthia. How are you?
Wonderful to see you again.
Oh, excellent.
So I'll introduce you briefly. I'm today with Glenn Aparicio Parry, and Glenn is the founder and past president of the Seed Institute, also currently the president of a think tank called the Circle for Original Thinking, and author of a wonderful new book, Original Thinking, with the subtitle, A Radical Revisioning of Time, Humanity, and Nature. So I'm so glad you could talk with me for a mini interview today. Here we are at Science and Nonduality, and I've got a big question for a little bit of time, and that is this. Okay, the question is, what is it that you know for sure, or mostly for sure, that most people don't seem to be aware of, but that has the power to positively transform their lives?
Good question. Very, very good question. And I would go to the elements. I am sure that the elements are alive: light, air, water, and earth. They're alive. And if people remember that they're alive and built a relationship with the elements, everything would shift. Everything would shift, because then we would no longer be considering drilling for oil through water. When we're 70% water, when the oceans, the earth are 70% water, we are completely interconnected with everything there is. I mean, we could not think, we could not be, we could not live if it weren't for the trees giving out the breath of life that we give back to them in a sacred circle. We could not be alive if it weren't for the water we were drinking, and we are...
So there's a vitality to these elements that you're speaking of. I mean, we can sense it, is what you're getting. That we know the difference between a dead world and a live world. Live.
Well, what I'm suggesting is simply that we remember and restore what we always used to know. We knew this before. You know, everybody knew this before.
And this is the idea in original thinking also. It's original. It's the first thinking.
The first, or it never went away, really. It's like, you know, where do we get language from? Where do we get thought from? We get it from nature. And it can come back. Even if we forget it all, it can come back again. You know, like my buddy Dan Moonhook Alford used to say, like, to tell a story about somebody who sang a song, and people said, nobody ever heard that song before, except one elder, and he said, oh, that song, that's over 100 years old. That song must have got lonely, you know, and come back, you know, and that's...
And you mentioned Dan Moonhook Alford, who means so much to me. I know, just to meet him is to... And he may have passed on, but he's not gone. We're remembering him right now. He's here. So this is part of it, too, right?
Absolutely,
And that brings me to the second part of the question, which is how do people bring this knowledge into their lives? Because you can have an idea, but then how do you make it you? How do you make it yourself?
Well, that's a very good question. So you're talking about the ancestors, and it's true. Their vibration is still here, you know, and it manifests through the elements. When a good person dies, you know, it rains. You know, when Grandfather Leon Secretero died, it rained all day in October, all day.
Is that a very special person?
Yeah. So it's very true. But even if you're just thinking about, you know, just coming through a breath of air, coming through the waters, coming through the soil, the ancestors are here. Their consciousness, perhaps it becomes more diffuse. For many, I think that's true. It just simply recedes into the whole environment. But for some, they have a special ability, like Grandfather Leon Secretero, who was a near and dear elder, and he kept showing up for all kinds of people right after he died.
Yes.
People that he had never even met in living. It didn't matter. He didn't restrict him, so he could move much faster then. You know, like a hummingbird, and that's one of the ways he would show up, as a hummingbird.
There was one just before you came, actually. So I think he was here.
Oh, good.
That's amazing. It was just right there.
I always pray that he be here, because you know, he's within my heart, and many who knew him. Yes. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So for people who are watching this and they're thinking, it still sounds a little out there, like they know they've lost loved ones, but they still have them with them. How can we embrace this living quality of elements?
Well, I would just simply suggest that when we breathe in, And next time you breathe in air, remember that you're breathing in life. For the Vedic thinking, it's prana. For the Jews, it was a ruach.
Yes.
In Latin, it's a plenum. It's for the Greeks, it was pneuma. I mean, we understood all this before, but just so remember that. Forget what you call it. Just breathe it in and be aware. That's keeping you alive.
So taking a moment, it's certainly something. Breathing is automatic, so usually we don't think about it all the time.
Well,
but we can bless our food, we can bless our water, maybe sometimes bless the air, or take a moment to be.
Yes, and the air, like Dave Abram would say, the air is aware. So it's really build a relationship. That's what I would say. Build a relationship with the elements. I like to tell the story about my first time learning about how to build a ceremonial fire.
Yes.
And to feed the fire tobacco, feed the fire sage. It's not about just, engineering, putting on wood. And then you begin to feel that essence. And I was blessed with the fire speaking through me. But that wasn't something I expected. It was just a beautiful miracle. But I know that you've had this experience, and that's pretty remarkable.
Well, some people watching will relate to these experiences, and they'll say, of course, you can talk to a fire. You can, in my case, talk with a storm. Because I had a dog who was afraid of lightning and thunder. And I needed to go somewhere on one of the rainiest, stormiest days. It was considered to be Stormageddon. It was in the newspapers that way.
Yeah, I remember.
So just by talking to the storm, I was tracking photos minute by minute, just because later, I knew years later I'd want to see this again. I'd want to see what that storm looked like, and then what happened to it after the discussion. So
that's very remarkable.
Yes.
And you're doing what indigenous peoples did in Indonesia when the tsunami was coming. They right before the tsunami came, they knew it was coming, and they talked. They prayed and talked to the tsunami to mitigate the effect, to be in relationship.
So this isn't crazy. I think a lot of people in our Western society were taught that only matter matters, but then we go and we abuse it. Like you said, drill for oil. Well, maybe where we shouldn't be doing that.
Here's what I want to ground it to. Look at all the ways in the English language that just using metaphor of water that we speak about our consciousness in. So we have a stream of consciousness.
We do.
We have underground thought. We have mainstream thought, but if the mainstream thought goes underground, then it's underground thought.
Yes.
Then thought is sometimes depicted as a cloud, or the clouds get together and we can bring